The equation of a straight line. Straight lines I've been singing a lot. I'm just gonna try to do maybe basics, but the main purpose of today is to make sure that I cover parabolas, as well as maybe hyperbolic functions or exponential functions if we have time. So straight line
Yes.
graphs, yeah. Okay, I think there's background noise on your side. Yeah, but now it's fine.
Oh, so can you please mute me because
Oh,
I
okay.
yeah.
Okay, no problem then. So with regards to a straight line function, I've taught the rest of you guys to say the equation of a straight line is given by y is equals to mx plus c. So these ones I've just explained them. So I'm just gonna try to explain them in passing, but I've taught you guys to say y is equals to mx plus c. It's an equation of a straight line whereby m represents our gradient, you all know. I've explained to say m represents the gradient. And then with regards to C, C always represents the y-intercept. C always represents the y-intercept. But I've just told you about this one, right? So the purpose of this session is for me to introduce what we call quadratic functions or parabola. So in maths, we welcome you, Naldo. You'll come across parabola, or if it's not a parabola, we call it a quadratic function. Quadratic function. So quadratic, it's a quadratic function. So there are a lot of types of functions that you need to know them by heart before you can enter the exam. So that's why I'm not explaining a lot with regards to straight line graphs or linear functions. So this one we call it a linear function because I've just taught you about this linear functions. So these ones I've talked a lot about them. I even showed you the theory of the concept of the gradients, whereby I was speaking to say the gradient can be positive, negative, zero, undefined. But yeah, it's a topic of another day. So the main purpose of this one, I want to introduce parabolas. So one thing that you need to understand is that parabolas or quadratic function, it's one and the same thing. And you're going to find it in grade 10, grade 11, as well as grade 12. So for grade 10, the equation of a parabola or a quadratic function, we give it as y is equals to ax squared plus q. Ax squared plus q. So this is the equation of a parabola or a quadratic function. So one thing that you must always remember with regards to this is that this A always represents what you call Michael and Naldo, the shape. It represents the shape. The value of A represents the shape, right? So when I'm saying the value of A represents the shape, it simply means to say we can have an instance whereby the value of A, which is the shape, it's A is greater than 0, or we can have an instance whereby A is less than 0, right? So in an instance whereby I'm saying A is greater than 0, it means to say the value of A is positive. And then in that regard, if A is greater than 0 is positive, it means to say our graph is going to be a happy face or a smiling face. So that's always going to be the case. If A is positive, it means to say if A is positive on the nose, it means to say it's a happy face on the mouth. So it means to say this a nose which is positive, it tells us that A is greater than 0 because anything greater than 0 is positive. And then the mouth tells us the direction of how the shape should look like. So if I were to basically highlight it just because of this is the mouth, it tells us that that shape of the graph, it should be a smiling face. You're going to draw it like that. Ne? And then on the other hand, one thing that you must understand is that if A is less than 0, anything less than 0, we know that it's negative. So all of these two, they represent what basically we say it's a shape. And then if A is less than 0, we know that it's negative. It means to say you're going to have what we call a sad face or a frowning face. So you're going to draw your eyes. And then if A is negative on the nose, it means to say you're going to have what? You're going to have a sad face. So those are some of the things that you must know with regards to you drawing that specific type of a graph. So it basically means to say if the value of A is negative on the mouth, it means to say the graph is a what? It's a frowning face, or the graph is a what? It's a sad face. So those are things which you need to basically know. And then with regards to that, as I'm continuing, so you can also try to write it here so that you don't forget to say, you know what, since now this one is gonna be a happy face, you can just write happy there. You can just write happy face. It's gonna be a happy face. You can just write happy face. Ne? And then this one you can just say it's a sad face. So those are some of the things that you must know. So with regards to the value of A, there's no way you can get an instance whereby your A is what? Your A it's 0. It's always going to be greater than 0, which is positive, or any positive number. And then it will be A is less than 0. Anything less than 0 is negative. Negative simply means to say it's what? It's a sad face. So those are two instances that you need to know with regards to parabolas. Any question? Any question?
No, sir.
Okay. So since there's no question, then it basically means to say now we can basically draw our graph. So I'm just going to make an example of me showing you how to draw a basic graph, which is a parabola considered as y it's equals to x squared. So you see this one, y is equals to x squared. You must not get confused. It's coming from what? And again, this before I proceed, this value of q is going to represent the turning point where the graph is going to turn. Where the graph is going to be turning, or turning point. So when I speak about the turning point, it's where the graph turns. For an example, we welcome you, Lolani. For example, if I'm going to draw my graph like this, where the graph turns here, it's a turning point. That's why in most instances we write TP. TP is abbreviated from turning point. Take in consideration if your graph is a happy face. It means to say, if your graph is a happy face, how do you see that your graph is a happy face? Always, a happy face, you see it with this instance. If A is always going to be greater than 0, we know that A is positive, then it is happy face. So what I'm trying to explain is that with regards to this matter graph that represents all parabola or quadratic function, the value of A represents the shape. And shape can be positive, which is A is greater than 0, or shape can be negative, which is A is less than 0. So those are one of the two instances that you will ever get. And then this Q, that's where the graph turns. You see this value always. There are times which they can give you, there are times in which they might not even give you. So this value of Q, that's where the graph turns. That's why when you look at this smaller example here, I was just trying to write to say, you know what, this is a turning point. Why? Because that's where the graph turns. So with regards to now me making an example to say, you know what, let me teach you how to draw the equation of a parabola given as y is equals to x squared. Before you can be able to draw y is equals to x squared, so this one is a matter graph of all the parabolas. It's not going to change. All of you are doing grade 10. The matter graph of a parabola is y is equals to x squared in grade 10. The matter graph of a parabola is y is equals to x squared in grade 11 as well as in grade 12. It's not going to change. The equation, it will still remain this. So this y is equals to x squared that you are learning about being the equation of a matter graph for all quadratic function or all parabolas is the same. Even a learner who's in grade 12, they are still drawing this graph. It doesn't change. So you need to be in a position whereby you know how to draw that. But before I can teach you how to draw it, we are taking this from the original equation that I've just elaborated here, which is this one, which is just this one. Let me write it here. Y, it's equals to ax squared plus q. So if I were to ask you a question, what is the value of A as well as what is the value of Q? Before you can answer me and for you not to make any mistakes, this is how you see it. Since I'm saying what is the value of A, what is the value of Q? This is x squared. So look at x squared first here. So this is x squared is the same as this x squared. Now this is when you can answer me. If I'm saying what is the value of A as well as what is the value of Q. you know that if this is x squared, that is x squared here. This a, you know that there's a coefficient of 1. They're not gonna write it always. It's always gonna be the case. It's gonna be 1. And then this q, we don't have it. If we don't have it, is the same as plus what? Plus 0. 0, it doesn't have any effect. That's why we are not writing it. So let me erase this so that I don't confuse you. So do you see how my equation looks like? It means to say this equation that they want us to draw, which is the mother graph of a parabola, y is equals to x squared, is the same as the equation y is equals to 1x squared plus 0. Why? If it's 1, they're not going to write it. That represents the coefficient. And then if it's q, it's 0. You know why? Because 0 doesn't have any effect. At the end of the day, it's going to disappear. That's why I'm saying, if you are writing it like this, y is equals to ax squared plus q, you're going to be in a position to know what is the value of a. Do you see? Of which a you can see to say, oh, a is 1. You're going to be able to see what is the value of q. Oh, q is 0. Do you get to see that? So that's why I'm writing it like this in order for me to show you what is going to be the value of a in that case, which our a is going to be equals to 1 as well as our q is equals to 0. So since I said what is the value of a, you're supposed to say, you know what, say the value of a is 1 because 1 represents our coefficient. A coefficient is a number before a variable. Our value of q is 0 because they didn't give us any number. So let me now erase this and now teach you how to draw the graph. So I want to make sure that I elaborate more on that so that you can be able to see how basically we draw our graph in that instance or in that manner. And then any question, guys? Any question? Yolani, any question?
No, sir.
Sure, Yolani. Michael, any question? Naldo, any question? So coming back to our equation, it's y is equals to x squared. So they want us to draw the graph y is equals to x squared. Remember, this y is equals to x squared. It's a graph. It's a graph, or it's a what? Yeah, it's a parabola, so to say. And then when it's a parabola, it's a mother graph for a parabola, which is a quadratic function. And then for you to be able to draw it, there are two ways in which you can draw it. So I'm gonna show you I'm gonna show you two ways in which you can draw it. Number one, we'll use the one that is more familiar, which is the table of values method. So to those who don't know what is the table of values method, is this one. Most of you are familiar to say, oh, when they say you must draw a graph, I normally see people drawing this, and then I don't know what does it represents. So it's representing the table of values method. So this is what this is x, and then that is gonna be 1. So that represents the table of values method. And then in that particular instance, it basically means to say, when you want to draw the table of values method, you can choose any x values that you want. Or when I here on this first, is it a row? I can choose to say, you know what, I'm gonna start at x is equals to -2, and then say -1, and then followed by 0, and then that's 1, that's 2. You are not gonna be wrong. Someone can say, sir, myself, I don't prefer to start at -2. I can start at -5 and at 5. So it means to say in that instance, it's going to be -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why did I choose -2, -1, 0, 1, 2? Is that a person who starts from -5 ending at 5, when he's drawing his graph, you might find that the graph is too long or the graph is too big. At the end of the day, the graph will fill the whole book. But why am I choosing -2, -1, 0, 1, 2? I'm just trying to be a bit smart to say I want my graph to fit on the A4 page, which is the book that we are using to write or draw the graph, right? And then in this instance, it means to say since now you understand, you are now going to draw what we call a Cartesian plane. A Cartesian plane is this one, whereby we are drawing our graph. So this basically means to say, for you to be able to draw your graph neatly, smartly, so you use a ruler. And get so you can just say that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. But don't do it like this as I'm doing it. You use those distances which are on the ruler so that your graph can be equal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you can say 1, 2. This one you can end at 3. You know why? Because this equation of y is equals to x squared, there's no way it can be underneath. It will always be from the point of origin going to the upside, because the value of q in this case is 0. Hence, it must be centered at the origin. So it means to say it's 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also use 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll actually see why am I saying we are not gonna draw our graph below the x-axis. And then always on the left-hand side, all these x values are negative, even this one. 2, 3. But we are not going to use those ones on the y-axis. And then you label your graph to say, you know what? This is the y-axis. And that is going to be the x-axis. Then you write x-axis. If you can just practice this, you're not going to struggle. And then here comes the question. All of you, do you all have the Casio calculators? Do you all have?
No.
Yeah, okay.
With me, I don't have it.
Oh, you don't have it? Okay, it's not a problem. The Casio calculator, let me just send a screenshot just now. Just give me 2 seconds. Let me send a screenshot on the group to show you the calculator that you must have. You see the picture of the calculator that I've just sent now in the group. That is the kind of calculator that you must actually. That is the calculator that you must actually have with regards to writing maths, because it's going to help you. Ne? Any question? Any question, guys?
No questions, sir.
Okay. So with regards to that, now, because I've just said you need to have that particular calculator in order for you to do what? In order for you to know the values that you're gonna get. Ne? But in that instance, let's say someone doesn't have a calculator. This is what we are going to do in order for you to get all the answers that we are gonna use with regards to writing them there on that particular table. So this is what we are going to do on your calculations. Ne? And here we know that on this example, okay, let me just try to make my work to be much neat. On that example, we know that we are drawing the graph y is equals to x squared. So this is what you need to know. You ask yourself a question. What is the first x value that you chose on the table of values? Isn't it? It's -2. Can you see it? So that -2, I'm going to say 4x it's equals to -2. This basically means to say I'm going to rewrite this equation right here. And then in a place of x, I'm going to write -2. So it's going to be y, it's equals to x squared. And then after it's y is equals to x squared, and get it on my table of values, just right here on the table, I've said x is equals to -2. This basically means to say where there is x, I'm going to put -2. So that will be y, it's equals to, there you go, you're having x. Your x is -2. And then you square it. And then after that, what we are going to do, y it's equals to, you know that -2 all squared is the same as -2 times -2. At the end of the day, you're gonna get 4. So it basically means to say where there is x is equals to -2, it's accompanied by y is equals to 4. We're gonna write it on our table. So you go there. On the table, we are having 4 as an answer, then you write 4. So this is, I'm helping someone who doesn't know how to get the answers when he's not having a calculator. So this is what you need to do. So that is one option that you can do. And then you repeat the same process on your scribbler doing the calculations. Or you can just write it on your answer script. You can say y is equals to x squared, which is the equation that denotes our parabola. And then now we are having x is equals to -1. This x is equals to -1. We are going to say 4x is equals to -1. This basically means to say you're going to rewrite the equation, which is y is equals to what? Y is equals to x squared. And then where there is negative, where there is x, we are now substituting -1. So you'll say y is equals to, there you go, you're having x. So I'm going to put what? What am I going to put here? Who can tell me? What am I going to put? What am I going to put? So since my x is equals to -1, I'm going to say -1, and then you square it. Therefore, the value of y is going to be equals to 1. Why? Because -1 times -1 is the same as 1. Why? Because negative times negative is positive. 1 times 1 is 1. So where there is x is equals to -1, it goes hand in hand with y is equals to 1. There you go. You go to the table, you write 1 because we got 1. You repeat the same process. You're going to say y is equals to x squared. And then here you're going to say 4. For x is equals to 0. This basically means to say on the formula where there is x, you are now going to put 0. So you know that that's going to be what? That's going to be 0. And then, sorry for that. So you know that that's going to be 0, then you square it. And then you'll say y is equals to 0 squared. It's the same as 0 times 0, which is 0. So you go there, where there is 0, you write 0. You repeat the very same process. You're going to say y is equals to x squared. Ne? And then, since it's y is equals to x squared, now we're going to say for x is equals to 1. So it means to say, where there is x, you are now going to put 1. So that will be 1 square. Ne? Y is equals to 1 squared is the same as 1 times 1, which is 1. So you're going to put 1. Yes, you're going to put 1, Yolani. And then lastly, we are going to put x is equals to 2. So you write your equation. Never write this without writing the equation. Y is equals to x squared. And then the next step, you're going to say for x is equals to 2. It's just that on these steps, let me show you. On these steps, the previous ones, I've just decided to jump the step right here. There, even here. But you must just write your work to be much neat. The reason why I didn't write it here and there is specifically, I have this understanding to say, maybe now you understand it. But you can just write it for your peace sake. Ne? Y is equals to, then remember, our equation is y is equals to x squared. So now, it means to say where there is x, you're going to put 2. So it means to say that is going to be y. It's equals to, that will be 2 squared. 2 squared, we all know that is 4. So our answer is y is equals to 4. Do you get to see that? So it means to say now, here, when x is 2, y is 4. And then after you get your answers, guys, I was just specifically doing that to accommodate the screen. Let me now enlarge it so that we can now plot our graph. After doing that, what are you going to do? You're going to now draw your graph. Remember, there is something very profound, something very important that I've just explained. Before I draw the graph, go to the basics. You know how I teach maths, ne? I'm one person, I don't like teaching maths without showing you the scenario of what you need to expect. That's how I teach maths. So let's come back to this serious business. I said this equation that we are drawing is y is equals to x squared. And then I further explained to say our a is equals to 1, if you remember. That is a coefficient. And then our q is equals to 0. So since where is this a is equals to 1 coming from? It's a coefficient from this equation. I told you there that is going to be 1. And then this one, I told you here to say it represents a. So it means to say our a is 1. And what does a represent? A represents the shape. So it's 1 greater than 0 or 1 less than 0. Who can answer me? It's 1 greater than 0 or 1 less than 0. Who can answer me? I want to see.
1 is greater than 0.
100%. 1 is greater than 0. And then since 1 is greater than 0, it means to say it's positive. So when you're drawing your graph, is your graph going to be a happy face or your graph is going to be a smiling face?
A happy face.
Happy face. Why is it the happy face, Yolani?
Because the slope is positive because one is greater than 0.
Yes, because not the slope is positive, because when we are saying the slope is positive, we are talking about the gradient. But because the shape is positive, I think that's a slippering of a tongue. You wanted to say the shape. Yeah, but you are correct. At
Yes,
least
sir.
you have an understanding, because the shape is 1 and 1 is greater than 0, and anything greater than 0 is positive. Hence it means to
Positive.
say, yes, hence it means to say, as you are going to draw your graph using these answers that we got on the table of values, you need to expect a graph that is like this. This is the graph that you are going to expect. Let me show you. Let's now prove it now. Let's now draw it. So let's draw our graph. How are we going to draw our graph? When x is -2, y is 4. So -2 on the x-axis, y is +4. Where the two they meet, you make a dot somewhere there. Where x is -2 and y is 4, where they basically meet, you make a dot, which is going to be somewhere right there. Are you all see? We are done with that one. And then followed by -1 and 1. -1 on the x-axis, 1 on the y-axis. Where the two they meet, you make a dot right there. Correct. We are done with that one. And then followed by 0 and 0. Where the two they meet, we know that 0 and 0 is on the point of origin. It's gonna be somewhere right there. Right? And then followed by 1 and 1. When x is 1, y is 1. You go on the x-axis where there is 1. You go on the y-axis where there is 1. Where the 2 points they meet, you make a dot. Lastly, when x is equals to 2, y is 4. It's gonna be 2 and 4. So since it's 2 and 4, where the two they meet, you make a dot. So this basically means to say, since now you are having those coordinates, never draw them using a ruler. You must always draw your graph using a free hand. As now we are drawing our graph using a free hand, it means to say your graph it will be like this. Your graph it will be like that. Tens like that. You draw your graph. Look at that. Your graph should be like that. Isn't it that this is your coordinate? That is the coordinate right there. There is a point right there. There is a point right there. There is a point right there. So that's how you draw your graph. In matter of fact, each and every time you draw an equation of a parabola, all the points that you are getting, they must be in alignment. If you are gonna get your points not in alignment, it means to say you are wrong. What am I trying to say? It means to say, look at this. If you were to draw dotted lines like that, you can see that the points are in alignment. If you can draw the dotted lines like that, you can see that those points are in alignment. That's how basically you're going to draw your parabola. Can you see that this shape that I drew right here is the same as this shape that I'm saying you are going to expect right there? Do you see? Do you see, guys? Do you see, guys? Naldo, Yolani, Michael, do you see?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that's how you're going to draw your graph. And then after that, you label your graph to say that is y, it's equals to x squared. If you draw this, if that's saying draw this graph, 5 marks, you get the whole 5 marks is the distinction. You get 5 marks. So maths is not difficult, guys. It needs you just to position yourself, to listen to me when I'm teaching you, to ask questions where you don't understand, to make sure that you put in the work, practicing, then you're gonna be perfect with regards to that. Any question? So since there's no question,
sir.
okay, sure. So I made an example to say, let us draw this equation. Y it's equals to what? X squared. We drew this graph, which is this graph right here on the Cartesian plane. So that was just basically the example that I made. And then with regards to that, since that is an example, what you on the other side you're gonna do? You're gonna be drawing what? You will be drawing what? You will be basically drawing this as part of your homework. Let's all go and draw the graph of y is equals to -x squared. Who can tell me? I'm gonna give you an idea on how to draw that. But it's similar to this graph, but it's not gonna be facing upwards. Who has an understanding of? I'm giving you this as a homework. So as part of the homework, you're gonna draw this equation. Y is equals to -x squared. And don't forget, Y is equals to negative x squared is one and the same thing. If they were to say draw the graph, y is equals to negative 1 x squared. It's one and the same thing, guys. It's just that here there is a coefficient of negative 1. That is why they didn't write it. But who has an idea of how you're going to draw that particular graph? Y is equals to negative x squared. Anyone who wants to share the idea? If none of you understand it, then I'm going to explain how you need to draw it. Anyone who wants to share? Anyone who has an idea?
So the values from the y-axis are all gonna be negative instead of positives.
Yes, 100%. Yolani. I'm seeing you, Naldo. I'm gonna be with you. Yes, Yolani, you are correct. Yolani is saying the values of the values for that graph y is equals to negative x squared, they're gonna be all negative instead of being y. It means to say, since they're gonna be all negative, and those are the y values, I'm gonna answer you, Naldo. I've seen that you raised your hand. Since Yolani is saying all the values on the y-axis they're gonna be negative, you go on the y-axis, you check where are you gonna all get the negative y values. It means to say, since I'm saying let's go and draw this as part of your homework, you are gonna draw that, and then you're gonna come across that graph that is facing downwards. Do you see? So it means to say this graph that I'm just drawing, let me erase it and redraw it again. Say I have a problem of unmuting, that's all. Okay, cool. Let me unmute you. If there's no background noise, then it's okay. So Michael is asking me to mute him because there's background noise. So yeah, I can unmute you. But yeah, as I was saying, since I'm saying let's go and draw y is equals to negative x squared, your graph should be like this. It should be that brown graph. And one thing that you need to understand, it should also point there. So I'm giving you an insight to say that graph, you need to expect it like that. But let me erase it. Go and draw it. So for you to go and draw it, you're going to use the very same concept that I was doing. For x is equals to negative 2, you substitute them in the equation y is equals to negative x squared. For x equals to negative 1, you substitute it back on this equation that I'm saying you must draw as part of the homework. And then you'll see the graph that you are going to draw being like that. You know why it's going to face downward? It's because of the value of a is negative. When the value of a is negative, it means to say the graph will be facing downwards. And then we have a sad graph or a frowning face. So on the new system of axis, which is the new Cartesian plane, you're going to draw the graph of y is equals to a negative x squared. So let's go and draw this using the table of values. Remember I said there are two ways in which you can draw any graph that you can ever think of. Whether a straight line graph, a parabola, an exponential function, a hyperbolic function. Don't stress, I'm going to teach you all the functions. And I understand that now we are on holidays. But since it's all holidays, it doesn't help to be on holidays whilst you are still struggling about this. That's why I'm saying we are going to attend the whole week, every day. We're going to attend. Those ones who are not attending, leave them. Even if there's one person who's available, I'm going to teach. I don't mind. But I don't want it to have one person whilst I'm teaching one person. I want it for all of us to be here whenever I'm teaching, so that we can basically learn these things. Because the disadvantage part is that some teachers, they don't teach this in class, right? So what I'm basically trying to say is that let's all practice, guys. And if you are practicing every concept that I'm trying to elaborate on our sessions, there's no way you can struggle about this. So that's how basically you draw this graph. It's gonna be a set phase basically based on that. So there are two concepts in this last 2 minutes left. There are two concepts in which you can draw the graph. One of the concepts is this one of using the table of values. So I'm not going to introduce the second concept now because I might be like confusing you. I want you to understand how we are drawing the graph or any graph using the table of values method. And then at a later stage, when now you have understood how we draw that particular graph, that's when I'm going to introduce the new method. But I believe the new method, you all know it, is that method of you saying x-intercept, let y equals to 0, solve for x. And then you say y-intercept, let x equals to 0, you solve for y. And then you're going to get two coordinates. After getting 2 points, you simply just join them. So that's another concept. So some of you might be familiar in knowing how to draw that particular graph using that particular concept. But in this case, the easier one for you to don't struggle is this one, Taylor-Villis method. That's why specifically there is a reason why I didn't introduce this one of x-intercept let y equals to 0, y-intercept let y equals to 0 at this specific moment. The reason why I wanted you to see all the coordinates that we are going to get. Can you see that here? We got all these coordinates, which is this point, we got that point, we got this point, we got that point, as well as we got the last point, which is that point. Do you see? So with regards to this one, the reason why I specifically taught you this method first is that I know that if you can know this method, it's gonna help you because it's going to show you all the points, and then it's gonna be easier for you to draw the graph accurately. So the disadvantage part of that second method that I'm yet to teach you at the later stage is that it only gives you 2 points. And then if you don't know how to draw your graph with regards to what I was explaining, which is the shape, which is that one, or which is this one, it basically means to say it might not favor you at that particular moment. So it's very important that you know how to draw the graph using the first method, which is the table of values method. That's the easier method. Any question, guys?
No, sir.
Okay, sure. So since there's no question, let's all go and draw the graph. Y is equals to negative x squared. And send our answers on the group. Sharp, guys. Stay blessed. Keep on practicing. Let's keep on practicing, guys. Let's keep on practicing. Make sure that you draw that particular graph. And then I'm going to upload this video on YouTube. You'll find it there if you need it. Thank you, guys. Thanks. Thanks for connecting. Bye.
Bye, Sam.
Bye-bye.
Sharp.
Sharp.